Today we're going to be going over the Master Duel tier list post-revived Legion. As you guys can see, chat's here with me. We're going to be talking about what are the best decks and what are going to be some of the most powerful decks in the entire format. Let's go ahead and start off with Branded, a deck that has been consistently good. What I like about Branded is that the deck just simply will not die. Branded Fusion allows you to be able to do so many crazy things, and it's just a deck that keeps playing no matter what. I still have to say that Branded is really, really good, which is just a testament of time on how powerful this strategy is, guys. If you guys picked up Branded when it first came out in Master Duel and continued to stay the whole course of the way, I think you've made your deck like 4 times over by now, at least 4 times over. And that would be just casually playing it. Moving on for Dark World, and I know my chat may love Dark World. I know you guys are going to say Dark World best deck, and it's a top deck, but if we're gonna talk about some reality in it, I wouldn't craft Dark World. It's not worth the gems. I was very disappointed that it wasn't a starter deck or, you know, one of the Master Duel decks. And it's really too expensive and not good for the payoff. One thing that is good about Dark World players is that you get to punish Maxi. So if you're ever in a situation where you just hate Maxi players, I don't know, a dumb player will Maxi you at the draw phase and you can just hand loop him. Next will be Mikanko. Mikanko, we talked about this earlier. I think Mikanko probably is the most hated deck for me, Master Duel wise, because the deck is really good when a person knows exactly what they're doing. Because it's best of one, it can take a lot of games all the way up until Platinum, and then going into Diamond, I still think that it's good against half of the matches. The other half, your opponent just may know what you're doing, which means you have to know what you're doing. Dragons, I think that Konami, Mikanko is the most, it's the most what deck? Mikanko is a cheap way to get wins and you don't have to try. I agree. When Konami decided to ban the Light Dragon, that's when this deck literally died, guys. It's not even a playable deck anymore. I know that there's players running around with like Red Dragon Archfiend builds and stuff like that, and to be honest, you probably are just better off playing Red Dragon Archfiend at that point. The deck is literal dead, and it feels bad to even put it in the same, you know, thing as Dark World, but here we are. I think that Exosister takes a good pilot, still a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck. As far as expense, I think it's a little bit too expensive for what it is. It requires a lot of ultra rares for the main deck, like Exosister Magnifica and stuff. But if you genuinely enjoy the strategy and you want to play like this deck, then it's pretty viable in Master Duel. Floowandereeze, I think that Floowandereeze does have some merit here. In the TCG, it's really good, but also in the TCG, there's so many cards that aren't hit that Floowandereeze does have hit. One of the biggest cards outside of the Floowandereeze cards being hit is Pot of Prosperity, which definitely severely limits the consistency on top of the cards being hit. So I would put it in experimental because it could work if everything goes right for it, but it's going to be hard getting everything to go right for it. I also think it's a pretty budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Now, Memento. Why is Sakitama an ultra rare Master Duel? Chat, we were this close to building Exosister until Sakitama became an ultra rare. I remember that. I was pretty upset. Memento, a new strategy in the new set. A lot of people are happy about Memento coming out. I have a lot of reservations. I want to put it in Xbox crossplay off because it's consistently done nothing in both the TCG and the OCG. I think even if Master Duel catches us up to all of the support that the TCG has, it would be experimental. But hypothetically, if they were to include the cards that are coming out in Infinite Forbidden in the OCG, it might be Takes a Good Pilot. It might be something else that might be Takes a Good Pilot, really good. I still don't see it as a top deck, but I think it'll be a lot better, depending on if we get the cards from Infinite Forbidden, which it could happen. We got Promethean Princess early on here, so it's definitely a thing. I think that Labyrinth is a top Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I don't see a lot of people on the ladder playing Labyrinth. It kind of puzzles me. I think it's because there are more Labyrinth players that focus on making it a trap deck as opposed to making Labyrinth what it is, which is kind of like a mid-range deck that uses traps to its advantage, but not necessarily a floodgate type trap deck. And that may be one of the biggest hot takes here. Some people may think that Labyrinth is a little weaker, but I think it's one of the better decks in Master Duel right now. I'm going to go ahead and put this in Takes a Good Pilot. The deck is really good. It's really good until you come across a maxi. I think that it's worth it if you guys are crafting it, because it's a very easy deck to build. Heroes are also really good, but on the other side of the spectrum, it is really expensive. But if you like Heroes, it's a solid deck right now. And if I remember correctly, we saw Mathmech lose Mathmech Diameter, and people were complaining. People were saying that it's still one of the best decks. Well, nothing else really changed after that. And Mathmech became another strategy that's kind of middling, which I think is just crazy how people did not give the Master Duel ban list enough credit. Now, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes they completely miss the mark. Sometimes they get things right. And the limitation of Mathmech Diameter really did hurt this deck. It changed the entire landscape. Plunder Patrol, definitely experimental. I think one of the better versions of Plunder Patrol is Plunder Patrol Labyrinth, but then you're leaning towards one of the best decks in the Master Duel game to be able to compete. So, still a solid deck though. Sharks, I would also say experimental. I don't have the heart to put these in Xbox crossplay off, because they're still playable decks, but I don't think that they do enough right now. They require either multiple sequences of cards to be able to go off. They don't have one card combos or consistent 2-card combos. So that's why I put them in experimental, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is kind of moving past those in terms of speed. Dark Magician. Yeah, Dark Magician's probably better than these two, but definitely still Xbox crossplay off, chat. Budget Shark. Dark Magician takes a good pilot. Oh no! The copium juice. You think Dark Magician's better than... Damn, all right. I guess I can't really say any of these other strategies. I don't think Dark Magician takes a good pilot. I think it's Xbox crossplay off. But so far, the best Xbox crossplay off. Dark Magician Chimera is the goo. I can't wait to see one of your replays with Dark Magician Chimera. Gold Pride. I think Gold Pride and Gold Pride Punk is definitely experimental. Needs multiple subset of experiences to happen, like multiple things to work in its favor for it to happen. That sounded really weird the way that I said it at first. But still is a decent Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I think Unchained is really good. Unchained's biggest problem is that this deck consistently needs 2 cards to be able to make boards. But more importantly, with Pot of Prosperity at 1, I think it changes the entire outcome of Unchained. It's not a top deck at full power in Master Duel. It's a deck that can consistently brick. And I was equally disappointed to build this deck and not experience the same thing that I experienced in the TCG. Also, it's incredibly complicated. Other guys, I'm gonna put it in Takes a Really Good Pilot. It's a safe little budget deck that has some cool things going for it. Super Heavy Samurai is still, I'm gonna put it in really good. The hits over time, I think, are gonna catch up to Super Heavy Samurai, which is why I put it in really good. But overall, it's a solid engine. I think that Red Dragon Archfiend takes a good pilot. Another one of those strategies that, with the right player, can do some really good work, but it's not a strategy that I would count on if you were just getting into the game and don't know the nuances. Vanquish Soul is another strategy. I'm just going to start putting them right here because there's a lot of takes a really good pilot. In my opinion, in Master Duel right now, there's a lot of middling the pack decks that if you play the deck correctly, you can get all the way to high diamond, low masters with it. If you don't play the deck correctly, you'll feel like you wasted a lot of gems. And I think that that's where these strategies pretty much sit. Mikanko, yeah, that again, we're gonna go ahead and put it in Takes a Really Good Pilot. A lot of Takes a Really Good Pilot decks here. Sprite, I actually think Sprite is experimental. I don't think Sprite's that good right now, which is weird because we have Sprite Elf, right? And to be honest, if we're gonna put Sprite in experimental, we actually got to put Rika in experimental. And there's actually a problem with these two decks that I think people have not paid attention to. When Sprite came out in the TCG and in Master Duel, we thought that this was probably one of the most overpowered decks in history because it just ignores hand traps. But the problems with both of these decks is that they don't do enough. Their inboard doesn't provide enough to make them very viable decks. Infernoble. Now, a lot of you guys may think that Infernoble is not a good deck. Infernoble is actually really good. And I think that this deck gets so much better with SP Little Knight. Now, the reason why I say that is because now SP Little Knight can be used as any 2 monsters to make, can get rid of an opponent's card, and can also make Easel. It's another part for the deck to make Easel. So if nothing happens between this set coming out and the next ban list, this may be one of the more powerful decks. Ironically, SP Little Knight helps out not only this deck, it helped out Rescue-Ace a ton. Because now Rescue-Ace has a bridge where its non-warrior monsters can make SP Little Knight, making Easel, Two Tails of the Noble Might a lot more better. I think that back row heavy decks are a lot stronger in Master Duel simply because 2 of the best back row decks in recent memory have gotten some huge support. I'm sorry to say this, guys, but oh, wrong one. The dream's over, guys. Sword Soul is experimental. Sword Soul is not good. It's just not a good deck at all. Like, it's just, it don't do that thing no more, chat. Needing specific 2-card combos in order to make mediocre boards is not working anymore, chat. It's really rough times. When I say Sword Soul, which has consistently been a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck with 0 support, is in experimental, you can tell that there is a substantial power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's not Sword Soul's fault. It's just that other decks are just getting more consistent and faster. I think that Tearlaments in all variants pretty much are really good. I think that they're a cut above experimental. As long as Tearlaments still have fusion cards and ways to send those fusion cards to the graveyard, this deck's solid. Anybody that's jumping into Master Duel that's new, don't start with Blue Eyes. You'll have a really rough time getting into the higher ranks. I mean, you'll have a really rough time just period in Master Duel, just because the deck's just so bricky and inconsistent. Purley, I think Purley is really good. I want to put Purley in a top deck, but I think that may be a little bit of the bias getting to me. I think Purley is just incredibly good in Master Duel, being able to make the Noor. And then we played against a Purley player that used a Ghost Trick engine to make double X Purley and the Utopia Beyond, which, as you can see, like that, it was a ridiculous type game. So if they consistently do stuff like that, it's going to be really hard to beat. I also think Mannadium is just still really good. SP Little Knight helps this deck tremendously. And now it's a lot of its awkward lines can end on SP Little Knight and banish Vicious Astral out from the graveyard. I think Dino is experimental, which is weird because Master Duel has everything now, right? And I'll be the first to admit, when I said Dinos get everything in Master Duel, it'll be a lot stronger. That's unfortunately not the case, and that's a little depressing. Zoodiacs, yeah, this deck's, it's not a real deck, guys. Zoodiac is an engine inside of your deck, probably a worse engine, but Zoodiac is a deck entirely. It's not a real deck. It's probably worse than Dark Magician. I'm not even gonna cap. Why Dark World and Xbox tier? If you go full gas for negates, inboard is strong. People also Ashing Danger never gets old. So you're relying on bad players to win. And we actually just had a little mini conversation about that. Relying on bad players to win games is not going to be a successful thing against good players, obviously. Also, your deck doesn't really do anything. Sky Striker, I want to put it in Xbox crossplay off, but I'm going to put some respect on Sky Strikers. I think that they're experimental. They're stronger. When Engage comes to 3, I think they'll be a lot stronger. I think Dinomorphia takes a really good pilot. This is another one of those decks that's just pretty good. Dimension Shifter, the Beekeeper, Bee Trooper, Wannabe, there you go. That card's really good. Ferret Flame's also amazing. Snake Eyes still becomes the best deck, probably even a little better because of the Solomon Great Pyro Phoenix. Now Zealantis, now the deck has another way to OTK through Zealantis. Earthbound, I think Earthbound is cross-play off. Don't do it, guys. It's not what you think it is. I think Chimera takes a really good pilot. I don't think that this deck is good. We were playing it to Masters, and then there are spots where you're like, you just have to be better than your opponent. Like, I don't think in any matchup where we played against a good deck, we had an advantage. We just had to finesse them into using infinite impermanences and effect veilers in the wrong spots, and then just be better than our opponent. The new Horus cards. Historically, in the TCG, the Horus cards have been okay. That's really just it. But I think we pointed out a couple of things that Master Duel is a completely different animal. The first thing is that the Horus cards does help decks like Tearlaments, which is another reason why I put Tearlaments so high. But also, Horus is an engine, Horus is stun, Horus this, Horus that. I think that the Horus engine in totality is going to be really good. So I'm going to put it in really good. And let me put it here because now we're starting to get on it. We might have to actually like do something about this. But I think that Horus is going to be really good as an engine because it helps decks like Orcus. It helps decks like Dragons, Resonators. It helps decks like Tearlament, like I said. It's just a very, it actually even helps the Chimera deck. So like it has so many things that it really builds on and helps other engines thrive. And Solomon Great, I think with the new support, it is getting Code of Soul. Solomon Great is incredible, guys. Even if Nibiru were played, it's still a really good deck. This deck has so many lines to play around Nibiru. And the best thing about it is that most of the cards, hopefully the rest of the Solomon Great cards are cheap. Most of the cards is just 3 structure decks and you're chilling. That's pretty much all that I have for the Master Duel tier list post the new set Revived Legion. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section, and I'll catch you on the next one. Do you guys think that Horus stun will be a thing in in Master Duel? I don't think it'll be as much as of a thing. And the reason why is because, you know, all of the floodgates are limited. I think that Majesty's Fiend and stuff will be a problem, but like some of the other things are, you know. Are Cyber Dragons crossplay? No. Cyber Dragons are actually a lot stronger because of the Horus cards. I would put Cyber Dragons maybe in experimental. Stun anything will always be a thing because people will rather get cheap wins than be good at the game. Damn. The shots. My stun players, you guys got to respond.